Okay, very good. Welcome back to the program. The time now is for us to get into the political arena, and this is how we do it. Good morning. Welcome back. My name is Victor Olo. On People in Politics today, as I earlier mentioned, yesterday, the Senator of Tana River, Dunstan Mungatana, I beg your pardon, on this very set, sat here and we discussed the issue of the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua, at length. Actually, we took almost 1 hour discussing that. Little did we know, or did I know, that that notice of motion was going to file that notice of motion with the Senate. And so today, the notice of motion is out. It was received by the Speaker of the Senate, Amason Jeffa-Kingi. And now, we are going to talk about what are some of the processes that it would take to impeach a deputy president, number one. Number two, what did it really cost the Mount Kenya region? And if at all he's impeached, what some of the options will the president have to have this government running until 2027? Paul Mugambi is a political analyst joining me on set for the very first time. Good to see you, sir.
See you, thank you.
Karibu sana.
Asante.
And Wakili George Kithi is also with me on set. Actually, he's sitting where Wakili also sat. By the way, Dunstan Mungatana is also senior counsel, right?
Yes,
Karibu sana to the program.
Thank you. Asante sana.
Karibu. So let's take a look at the front pages very fast. Let me start with the front page of the Star newspaper. Counties burnt 10 billion shillings on luxury and fuel in 1 year. That is what is here. On the front page of the Star newspaper, counties burnt 10 billion shillings on luxury and fuel in a year. And on the inner pages, you can take a look who are the lowest spenders and the highest spenders. Now, top three. One, Kakamega spent 521 million shillings in a year, Nakuru 442.24 million shillings, and Bungoma 433.1 million shillings. The extravagant expenditures are claimed under operations and maintenance. That is what is here. And so, some 37 devolved units spent 5.12 billion shillings on hospitality alone. Okay. So what austerity do we have? You can take a look at that story on the inner pages of the Star newspaper. Let me continue on the other page of front page of the Daily Nation. 720 million shillings jobs fraud suspect who was en route to Germany trip. That is what is here. 720 million shillings job fraud suspect who was en route to Germany trip. The gentleman is also on the front page. Let me give you the reader. Hundreds of Mr. Caesar Kingori victims, Kenyans and foreigners included, have recorded statements with the detectives, but efforts to have their money refunded have hit a brick wall. Although he was not part of President William Ruto's recent delegation to Germany to sign labor agreements, Mr. Caesar Wagisheru Kingori, alias Shrewd of Vintmark Travel Agents Limited, managed to find his way to Berlin while he was hobnobbing with leaders at meetings on overseas work opportunities. He had left a trail of victims of his jobs racket back home, where investigators had summoned him for questioning. That is what is here. So, again on the front page, there was a bit of some fiery moment when Treasury CS, that is John Mbadi, appeared before the Transport Committee, and it was so dramatic, so to say. Still on the front page, we won't be cowed. Varsity staff vow to go on with their pay strike. They were tear gas yesterday when they were trying to petition Parliament on the same case, testing the waters. What it will take to impeach Gachagua? Yes, this is what's going to be our discussion. So what will it take to impeach the Deputy President? Okay, lastly, on the front page of The Standard, DP's troubles pile up as leaders aim for spoils. That is on The Standard. DP's troubles piles as leaders aim for spoils. We have got Tana River Senator Dunstan Mungatana, beg your pardon, wants the Senate to censure the Deputy President, even as a senior Mount Kenya leaders position themselves should the looming impeachment idea materialize and vacancies occur. Okay, he was here yesterday. Again, what it takes to impeach him. So let's look at the probe lineup as highlighted here by The Standard. One, we have Kithure Kindiki, who is now the CS for Interior, Kimani Ichung'wah. We have Anne Waiguru, Ndindi Nyoro, Cecily Mbarire, Gladys Wanga, Mwangi Kiunjuri. That's the list, you know, as alluded by the Standard. So let me start it where I should. Mugambi. So we are here once again. We were here years ago when we saw then the deputy president, now the president, William Ruto, had his not so good moments with his boss then, President Uhuru Kenyatta. What an interesting time to live in Kenya.
It's not reinventing the wheel, is it?
I bet.
The more things change, the more they remain the same. So,
you're right.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I just don't think there is anything new. I think the relationship between the president and the deputy president is broken, beyond repair.
So fast.
Yeah, I mean, divorce comes as soon as the marriage is consummated. I mean, divorce probabilities.
Yeah.
So we call that in law, in the Marriage Act, or the judges, when they are trying to give you a divorce, they say the marriage is irretrievably broken.
Yes.
And I think it's at that point right now.
So this is where we are. It is not something new again. But the question I should be asking you, then, what kind of politics is this? I mean, for how long will Kenyans be treated to this back and forth between bosses and their deputies?
It works. It happens everywhere. I think it's given more limelight right now because it's happening at the national level. Look at the counties. Most deputies have no roles. I mean, they have differed with their bosses. Even don't go any further. Look at the schools. Look at the primary schools. Look at the secondary schools. There are differences, major differences between the principals or headmasters and their deputies. Look at the directorates. So it's everywhere. Only that this is happening at the national level. I don't think it's so unique. And the earlier that is sorted out, the better, so that the country moves forward.
The earlier sorted, the better. But Wakili, Article 147 and 134 is quite open. Perhaps that's why the deputies are not so comfortable with their bosses, all bosses taking advantage, whichever way you may look at it.
Well, the institution of presidency has developed in this country from the experience that we've had over time, since the independent constitution until now. It has been tested and tested and retested. One of the things that we've done when promulgating our contemporary constitution was that we reacted to events of the institution of the executive in presidency. And one of the things we did is we looked at the behavior of probably partly President Jomo Kenyatta, but largely President Moi, because he's the one who informed a lot of the reforms by the way he conducted the public affairs. And we reacted to the fact that we formed a union of inseverability between president and the deputy at the whim and the behest of the president. And therefore, the institution of executive, meaning presidency in this country, has two people. One is the president and one is the deputy president. The president has roles that we've given him in the constitution, partly as head of state and military head and also head of government. In that fusion of institutions, we therefore have created a person with a lot of powers that is symbolic to the country. It is one that we've also protected because at the time of the pendency of the presidency and when the president is serving, that's the time that you cannot take him to court for criminal offenses. So we've insulated the institution of presidency and some privileges have been put there. But it comes with responsibilities. The president has responsibilities, but one of the responsibilities is to come into office with a deputy president. The union is as good as the union of marriage. What we did in the Marriage Act is that once you're married, we do not want you, whether you like it or not, to divorce immediately. We want you to test the union of marriage. So you have to stay there for some time. It's called a term limit. So the limitation of time that has been put there, if you want to divorce again, you don't just go and say, I don't like the person. No, you give reasons. There's adultery, there is cruelty, there are many reasons that you give. For purpose of the court to allow. By the way, you can go and petition for divorce, and the court refuses. Because you've not pigeonholed your reasons within the confines of the law. So we've made it difficult for somebody to walk out of marriage, and deliberately because we are protecting the institution of marriage.
Yeah.
And that's us as Kenyans. Of course, borrowed largely from the British common law and all. Now, when you come to presidents, when you created that union, the thinking was that because we've seen how a deputy president has been abused as an institution by the presidency itself, we reacted to that, and we form a sort of an inseparable environment where it will make it difficult for the deputy president to be removed. So the reasons for removing a deputy president are the same reasons for removing the president. And impeachment is one of the reasons, for many reasons, including capacity and when he's basically not abided by his responsibility under the Constitution. One of it, which is what I think Danson Mukatana was saying yesterday, Mheshimiwa, he is supposed to promote the diversity of Kenyans and promote cohesion.
Yeah.
So if the deputy president every morning wakes up and talks about Mlima, every day, persistently, consistently, incessantly, continuously, every day, at a wake up, at a breath, at everything. When I have put him there personally, other personal Kenyans, for purposes of uniting us, for purposes of enhancing cohesion in the Constitution, but more importantly, for purpose of being a president of the whole Republic of Kenya. Not a region, not a people.
Yeah.
Not even 2 people or 3. So we have biases. When you're put in an office, you have biases. You don't stop being a human being. No, you have biases. But we have elevated you with responsibilities. By the time you agree to assume into that office, you come with responsibilities. So if you are a judge of the High Court, you are biased, you lost a relative from an accident, and a driver comes before you and you have to judge whether he's guilty or not, that bias, he has to step aside. You have to put it aside. And ask him, did he or did he not commit the crime, and so on and so forth. It's not just because you lost a relative from a road accident, everybody who comes there, a matatu driver, you keep on jailing. It doesn't work like that. So when you come to the institution of presidents, we have elevated that institution. You stop being a normal human being. You become a public officer. And that is what we said when we were debating the BBI case, and that's what the Supreme Court pronounced itself. You do not become a normal human being. That's why Uhuru Kenyatta could not anchor reforms from the popular initiative, because he's not a normal human Kenyan. He is not. He's a special Kenyan.
Based on his
elevation stature as president.
Right.
It's an institution we protect, but it comes with responsibilities. So we'll give you certain responsibilities, but take away the privileges, some of the privileges. They may even be annoying to you. But yes, you are there.
So apart from this, you know, the whole issue of the deputy president talking about Mlima each and every morning, which you are saying that, and other people actually, that is not the right way to go. Could there be underlying currents that perhaps is forming this kind of sense of...
So let me look at it from the legal perspective, then the political perspective, and then try and fuse those two. Okay. Because legal political becomes very complicated in its own way. Now, there is a principle called principle of collective responsibility. This means that at a fusion of an institution such as the executive and presidency, you must work together by law, by demand of law and demand of the Constitution, and of course Kenyans. If then there's no collective responsibility, it's a breach of the same principle of collective responsibility. In the instance of collective responsibility, what is the role of the deputy president? It is to deputize the president. Meaning it is what the president comes first and then the second president. The second in line will be the president. So the Constitution mentions the president and then deputizes to the deputy president. So the deputy president must conform in matters and the confines of collective responsibility to what the president does. He must defend the institution and his president continuously, and not therefore cause friction with that institution by public odium, by public pronouncements that undermine the very institution, because it is an institution that has its rules. So in the principle of collective responsibility, it is the deputy president who has a higher calling and a higher duty to conform to the institution, because it is what the president does, and whatever he does, it is deemed to be a deputization on his from his part. So whatever the president does, the deputy president is in constant deputization of the president. It is not that the president then wakes up and says, now I'm deputizing to you. It is a constant.
That sounds like there is like co-presidency.
So yes, it's co-presidency to the extent that one is below the other. So when that happens, is whatever they do, they must be seen to be doing together. It doesn't matter how he packages himself. That is the demand of the law.
Okay.
And now to the politics. When therefore you walk away from your responsibilities, I don't feel he represents me. I don't feel honestly that the deputy president represents me.
Why?
I feel he represents other people.
Okay.
Because he doesn't talk about me. He doesn't talk about my economy. He doesn't talk about my working environment. He doesn't talk about my welfare. He doesn't talk about the good of the country. He talks about certain people, a certain fiefdom of this country and the good of those people. That's what he does. So he is not my president. In terms of legitimacy, he is losing the legitimacy to represent Kenyans as a deputy president. He is de facto and by de jure, I mean by law, the deputy president. But by legitimacy, he is losing it because he constantly confuses himself by speaking for certain people, not for all Kenyans. He should talk about the about devolution and why money is not going. He should about the schools. He should about there are many problems in this country which he should be addressing, and that would be appealing.
Okay.
Now to the politics. He is the maker of the problem. He is the maker of the problem. Because you see, if you look at his constant conduct throughout the path he's traveled when he became deputy president, he's been very aggressive and abrasive. From the fact that this country is a shareholding country. No, it is not. It is not. Democracy is such that we must compete. In fact, we must compete so that we are biased for someone. We compete on account of biases. So if I'm biased for Raila Odinga and I'm biased for William Ruto, that's okay, it's my constitutional right. Okay. But after that, you must unite as a country. So you don't come and tell me, because I was biased for Raila Odinga, I am not part of the country because of the administration and benefits, because I'm not a shareholder. No, it's not true. And that's not the constitution either.
I mean,
and he's not promoting cohesion. When
you look at, you've talked about, the political bit of it and the legal bit of it, and you also talked about the legitimacy.
Yes.
So then, what options does the president have at this particular point? Because we've not heard the president talk about his beef with his deputy. The only thing that you can hear every day is the deputy president now lamenting that he's been frustrated, including his family, what he said last week. I want us to take a look at that. But then most importantly, would it really take to impeach the deputy president? If so, what next until 2027? Let's take a break. We'll be right back. I have Paul Mugambi, political analyst, and George Keithy on set. Stay with us. Welcome back. So, in the history of this nation, we've never seen a situation where a deputy president or vice president, as per the old constitution, was moved from office. If this happened, it would be one of a kind. But let's come back and test now. How, first of all, before we get into the process, Paul, you can imagine that scenario. A deputy president of Kenya is impeached for the first time. Paint for me a picture.
It's not the first time, really. The vice president under the old constitution, a few of them were President Moi used to wake up in the morning, a lunch hour by roadside, and say, he's appointed so-and-so as the vice president, because back then, under the independence constitution, the vice president was appointed by the president. He was an appointee, just like the ministers. Look, the likes of Karanja, likes of Mwai Kibaki, all of them were fired. So it was not the first time. Suffice to say that under the new constitution...
But that was a direct from president to his bosses. But this one is going through a legislative process, an impeachment.
Yes,
process.
Because of that experience, like Council here said, we decided to safeguard the office of the deputy president under the new constitution, 2010. And you can see that the president right now has no powers to remove his deputy once they appoint them during as their running mates, during the election. But Parliament, being the representatives of the people, has the powers to remove the Deputy President from the office by way of impeachment. Also, he can remove himself. Yeah, the Deputy President can decide, okay, fine, since you are going to remove me and you have the numbers, let me resign, which is safer, actually. If today, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua waited until his removal is orchestrated by Parliament successfully, so he cannot hold any other public office. It's done. His goose is cooked. That's the end of it. Yeah. But if, and I'm using the one if, this motion of impeachment finds its way to the National Assembly, for your information, it must be introduced in the National Assembly, not the Senate. It must be introduced in the National Assembly. It must be passed in the National Assembly by 2/3 majority. First of all, whoever is collecting the signatures must get at least a third of the members, about 117 members, for the motion to be admissible. And the Speaker of the National Assembly, then, Moses Wetangula, is obliged by law, by the Constitution, to admit to the motion and purposely set a day for that debate. Just purely that debate about the impeachment. And once you have the requisite numbers for the motion is debated. There are grounds for removal that now you have to debate. This process is quasi-political, quasi-legal. It's both political, it's legal. It's not necessary. It's not a legal process where you must you must be able to get to a certain threshold legally. It's political. So, and you can see from the Constitution the grounds for removal, and Article 150, some of them are, mentally incapacitated or abuse of office or, breach of the Constitution, those kind of things. I am debating within myself about now, especially the breach of the Constitution. I listened to what my colleague Kanzukidi said. It's actually not, I would use the word breach. It's actually a breach of the Constitution. As a state officer under Article 260 of the Constitution, it's a breach of the Constitution to talk about a certain region over and over again when you hold the state office of the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. I come from the Mount Kenya region myself, and I feel constrained because now the rest of the country would think that the Mount Kenya region, its inhabitants and residents are selfish people who only talk about themselves once they are sent to the high positions of leadership, such as the office of the Deputy President. I was watching the Deputy President in Coast some time ago, and he was telling the locals that, now me, I have to leave. I don't want to stay here because I don't belong here. I have to go back to the mountain. Yeah. I was like, oh, wait. I thought this was the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya. And recently, when they were in Nyanza with the President, every time he rose to speak, he would say that, you'd tell the residents, receive greetings from the mountain. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. You don't do that. That's demeaning the office of
What do you think is the political
president.
endgame when he repeatedly talk of Sisi watu wa Mlima, Mount Kenya region, etc., 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 whether he is in location X in the country or Y? What is the political endgame?
I think he's misadvised, either by his advisors or by himself, because once he thinks that by doing that, you galvanize some support from the mountain, which as at now is not unanimous that he's the leader of the mountain. There's no unanimity that, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua is the kingpin of the Mount Kenya region. There's so many disagreements as to who is the leader of the mountain. And he thought by doing so, coupled with the apology, quote unquote, he gave to the former President Uhuru Kenyatta, that now you'll have almost negligible resistance in the mountain, and therefore you would be able to to show the mountain that he's the leader of the mountain from the east to the west, from Nyandarua, Nakuru, all the 10, 11 counties of them, all the way to Meru and Tharaka Nithi and Embu. So, but it has worked in the opposite, as it should be, because once, look at the former Deputy President, now the President of the Republic of Kenya, William Ruto. He never at one point carried himself as the leader of the Rift Valley. Even though we knew he came from Signishu County, he was a member of parliament for Eldoret North for many years. So he carried himself as the Deputy President of Kenya. And to now try and turn that to be, now you are Deputy President of the mountain, that's absolutely ridiculous. You can as well go and vie for the chairman of Council of Elders there, and be, now you are able to speak about the mountain. You can talk about, as the chair of the Council of Elders here, and you wear those hats which the elders wear. You show yourself as the leader of the mountain. But as the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, that's a breach of the Constitution. And I think the members of Parliament have a lot of meat, quote unquote, have a lot of strength there, and at Koten, one of the things you cannot do is to try and discriminate any part of this country. The principles and values of governance is breached almost every single one of those. You try and make sense of the whole drama. It doesn't make sense to me. Look at it right now. The president is out of the country.
Yes.
Instead of talking about, under the Constitution, he is the acting president. That's what the Constitution, that's how we framed our Constitution. Once the president is out, the deputy president assumes the roles of the president.
Okay.
He's busy traversing the mountain and talking about certain things. That's not acceptable.
I don't know what you think about this, Wakili, as well. As perhaps you can also add your voice into that so that we expand the conversation. I like what you've said, quoting different articles in the Constitution. But then the most important thing that all of you have said is that the Deputy President stops being a normal citizen by virtue of his office, all right? By virtue of his office. But then now, that motion, the essential motion is already, filed and signed, received by the Senate Speaker. So what next? Of course, senators will have to look at it. It has to go to the National Assembly again. And
not really. That's essential motion.
Okay.
It's not an impeachment motion. It's of no consequence.
I stand guided. I stand guided. But then now, when you look at the numbers, Azimio and Kenya Kwanza, do you think this might even see the light of day? Perhaps that's why the Deputy President is comfortable wherever he is, I think. I don't know.
Now, let me put it this way. First, just to add on to what my good friend has said here, is that Gregadi is suffering from two issues. One is he did not come to the Deputy Presidency as a matter of right. Because in politics, you either bring money for the campaign or you bring numbers, or both. He didn't have the numbers from Mount Kenya, so we suspect he had the money. Or maybe he didn't. If he didn't, it's even worse. But I hope he did. So let's assume he did. When you bring the money and the president's, the campaign determines, what else do you have to offer? Nothing. And therefore you have to go back and find a clientele base upon which you can pitch your politics on. So you work from the reverse. So that you have the clientele base upon which to propel you into deputy presidency, you didn't have. And therefore, when you go back and start now reorganizing, you become a tribal chieftain. Now, given this country is ethnocentric politically, and therefore you come to the table with your own ethnic clientele base. Raila has had it his way many times on account of the ethnic background that he commands, almost emotionally. And so did Rift Valley vote for the presidency overwhelmingly, and so on and so forth. So you need then to have your first fissure in politics, because we've talked of biases. You need to have a biased clientele base for you. And then you do the add-ons from the other tribes that are not sponsoring presidency or deputy presidency. He didn't have that. So he has to retreat and galvanize Mount Kenya for purposes of then, stemming some insulation, political insulation of sorts, And two, charting his political path, but most importantly, also bringing to the table something for someone. Because he can be president as we speak now. Because he's not an organic political figure for the whole country. In fact, a very divisive political figure, if you ask me. So then, fast forward will be that he needs to go back to the mountain, bring numbers. But when he goes back there, he retreats, he leaves a gap.
But is he getting the numbers through this?
No, he can't. He isn't, because he's late in the day. That's why he should have started with the numbers then, but he didn't have numbers. Most importantly is when he retreats and leaves a gap, Raila Odinga walks in very fast, all right? Because there's a gap of some representation of sorts, political, probably space that has been created by his own conduct. And I think it's the make of his problems. And if you look at the opposite of the behavior, if he did not conduct himself in the manner he did, then he would be a humble, amiable deputy president who is inclined to this good man he keeps on saying he is. The other bit also is then in parliament. Does he have numbers in parliament? Obviously, we saw the other day part of the numbers that ran away from him in Mlima. We have not seen him close to any command of numbers in parliament. And therefore, any motion that is politically instigated in parliament, he will have no say, because he doesn't have his way there. And that is because of the fact that he has been this one-man show inclined to Mlima politics alone. And you see the problems that he's getting himself into. So any politically instigated motion in parliament, he is going to lose, because he may not galvanize numbers, and there's nothing he can offer to this politician, in a sense, for now. Until such a time that space is created, or he creates that space, where then he probably will say who will have the certificate to run as MP in parliament and this and that, which he doesn't have that voice. He doesn't even speak for UDA. He's not the spokesperson for UDA. So basically, he's all over nowhere, if you ask me, except the office, which he goes to. But then if you ask me what is my opinion of the staffing of the office of the deputy president, I'll tell you, I don't expect a Pokot there. I don't expect an Oromo there. I don't expect our day there. I expect his own people there, of the manner in which he talks. And I can tell you, it's a threat to himself, not to us.
Okay.
He must, and let me add this. The deputy president must learn to fear Kenyans. There's no leadership without fear. Fear of the law and fear of the reprimand of the people. That's how you keep on cajoling and seducing the people your way. And you don't talk at people continuously and persistently. Your conduct in public, and we say it even in the Constitution, your conduct in public must be befitting of the office that you hold.
Mugabe, what do you have to say before?
Essential motion that you've just alluded to. First, I feel there are two things. I think the legislators are trying to test waters, just to answer your question on numbers, to see whether this can work, it cannot work, and if it can work, how. Although I strongly feel that it's not the right approach. I mean, censure attracts it's not punitive. Just express your displeasure. That's it. That's
like
about
a warning
it.
shot.
Yeah?
That's like a warning shot.
Yeah, like it's just let's reprimand this fellow. That's it. You say, we're displeased with the conduct of the deputy president, and he needs to change. Or that's about it. So it amounts to nothing. So I strongly feel Senator Denson Mongatana, who is an experienced legislator, having worked in the National Assembly and the Senate right now, he's been in politics for a while, he's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya. He should immediately withdraw that motion if they intend to impeach the deputy president. It waters down the impending or looming impeachment, to say so. It should wait until that motion is introduced in the National Assembly, the impeachment motion introduced in the National Assembly, supported by the requisite numbers. As of now, I think it could be angry, and maybe rightly so, as other Kenyans are, maybe other senators, but I don't think it's the right time to introduce that motion.
You know, an interesting bit of this thing is that we've not seen the president even talk about it.
He shouldn't.
Unlike last time, the political intonations would point at a direction where the president then, Uhuru Kenyatta, would, give some parables and some proverbs here and there. But here, the president is quite mum, completely.
I really hope he's not drawn into this. we've had the Deputy President talk about it in Dhika, for instance, when he was saying that he spoke to the President about it before he left the country. The President told him that would be stupid to bring that kind of a motion. That's what he said. But I really hope the President is not drawn into this, because that's not his bit. Let the MPs, let the members of Parliament do what they're supposed to do. One of the roles of the National Assembly, members of the National Assembly, is to, under Chapter 8 of the Constitution, is to impeach the President or the Deputy President, and the Senate to participate in the impeachment process. In fact, the Senate is even supposed to set up a committee to investigate the allegations against the Deputy President. So these are cardinal responsibilities. Let the members of Parliament do it, do their jobs. Let the President not bring himself into this. If tomorrow the National Assembly passes the motion, and the other day, after 7 days, the motion is also passed in the Senate, and the certificate of impeachment is issued by the Senate to the President, then he has another 14 days to appoint another Deputy President and send the name to the National Assembly for approval.
Okay, what are the possibilities?
First, let me put it this way. My good friend says this may not be the best process. I think it is the best. I'll tell you why. You know, a wound starts with a pimple, then grows and becomes a wound. If you don't treat it, becomes even cancerous sometimes. Look at the Gen Z's protests. They didn't start in its full blast. They started like a joke. 14-year-old, what can they do? Suddenly, a whole cabinet was removed. And it had reached a situation where the presidency itself was threatened. You know, having participated in politics substantially, I would say, you ordinarily introduce a topic for discussion, all right? And allow it to pick a life of its own.
Does it have to be controversial?
Yes.
Okay.
You have to market it as controversial, obviously, for it to be debated, because we are debating it now because it's been introduced. Now, when you do that, you then watch. You watch the person, the victim, as he lesses around what to do. As you watch him, you build on the case, keep on building the case. There are things we don't know, because the Auditor General may have information that we're not discussing here, and many other things of breaches that we don't know. But that is actually comes out usually, until such a time when the decibels are so high that there's no turning back. That is where you need to reach. As we speak right now, you will be attracting sympathy to the Deputy President in certain areas, certain quarters of a victim if you do not package your case properly. We have not reached as a situation where you can accuse him, where you fuse the legal and the politics. He must smell. He must be so dirty, such as that there is no other way of repackaging him. And that's where you need to reach. And I think that's where you need to start. That's one. And number two, and most importantly, is that the Deputy President will fight back. And I can tell you, he'll fight back in the tones of a victim. It is too early in the day when you look at the next election to allow him maneuvers. You must get him when it is right, and timing is everything in politics. So you can't remove him now, move him when it is the right time. Either you remove him early enough so that you can rebuild in the process and go back to the clientele, whether you lose in the circumstances or become disgruntled or feel disenfranchised, or in the alternative is that you get him the last minute so that there's no other way he can maneuver. Remember the political alliances that the Deputy President can build to sabotage the President or compete with the current regime is narrowed, because the most unavailable would have been Raila Amolo Odinga and his ODM opposition. That's not available, but there's the Kalonzo Musyoka access. That's available probably for a union of sorts with him if he so wishes. And therefore you need then to be able to put measures of scale in terms of political benefits vis-a-vis the plus and minuses in terms of the move. But I think to test waters on what then would be the implication, you don't move directly to impeachment. Test it with him, what he can do, what he brings on the table. And the reaction back home, whether he has gotten the influence now, he'll play victim and whatever. Then when you say...
Is this a case of a divide and rule? Perhaps. I don't know from which quarters, but is it an attack of divide and rule, Bugambi?
In what sense?
Again, I say this with, I don't know where it's coming from, but when you look at the way the way the deputy president talks about Mount Kenya, Watu and other people, let me put it, the people he work with, his supporters, other legislators, are also talking about the same thing. They don't talk about it anywhere else. And you also see a part of Kenya Kwanza administration actually is a Kenya Kwanza administration that is split. One supporting the other side, one is supporting this other side.
What do you mean? He has 4 MPs, three MPs, 3 members of the National Assembly and 1 senator. That cannot be the entire Kenya Kwanza leadership or UDA or anything to do with that. I mean, you saw even from within the mountain, 48 MPs. 48 from now, the Central Kenya, former Central Kenya province. You saw about 48 of them really say no to him and say now, since you're not involved in public administration and governance issues, development issues, okay, fine. Let's have someone else who will talk on our behalf on matters development. And you've seen now the Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki moving around the region, opening the roads that were stalled, and that's something that I saw KBC yesterday covering him in Nyandarua, in Kinangop and those other areas when he was inspecting development and opening those roads. The other day was in Kiambu County. I think the Deputy President does not carry the hopes and aspirations of the region. If he did, then you'd have all the elected leaders, you know, coalesce around him. They don't. They're trying to coalesce around someone else. He has only 4 legislators. You know, 4 members of the National Assembly, 1 senator. It cannot be now it's Mount Kenya speaking. It is him speaking, okay, plus 1 or 2 other elected leaders. The
numbers, probably we can talk about 3 or 4 people, legislators, but we are talking about him because of these 4 people. Their voice is way heard.
Actually, we're talking about him because this chat, I would expect Senator of Kiambu, Dangwa, for instance, who says, talks about Kiambu, I would expect him to speak about Kiambu. Why? Because he's elected to speak about Kiambu.
Right.
I would expect the Kadhoni Mushomba to talk about her people. You know, I would expect the member for Embakasi Central to talk about Embakasi Central, because by law, those members are supposed to talk about the people who have elected them. But nationally, when we now escalate this conversation nationally, the state officer here, who is a national figure, is the Deputy President under Article 260 of the Constitution. So he's the one who is supposed to talk about national issues. And the reason as to why we're talking about him here is because he's been unable to do that. He's been so divisive a character that you cannot imagine him holding the office of the Deputy President for 5 years.
Okay.
It's untenable.
Let's assume that the 3 of us are sitting with him somewhere with his advisors, and how can he salvage the situation?
He can salvage. There's nothing to salvage.
I think it's like I told you, it's irretrievably broken. He cannot salvage the situation.
Gentlemen, I am an Arsenal fan.
Yes.
I know what happened to us 10 seconds to go. Over the weekend.
That's Arsenal, and they play good football.
I know what happened to us
he
10
doesn't play any football. He doesn't play in good politics. That comparison is elevating his stature. You don't elevate his stature because he doesn't want to elevate it himself.
So he cannot salvage.
No, he can't, and he shouldn't.
I don't think he can salvage himself.
Let me tell you, behavior and conduct are related. If you conduct yourself in a certain way now and tomorrow and the other day, I'll call you abrasive, I will call you, loose talker, I will call you whatever you, because you did it once, and then twice, and then 3 times. So there's political packaging out of his own behavior, talk, and conduct. There's no other political packaging we can take from him. We are consuming what is given us. I'm consuming what is given me. So there's no other way as Kenyans we can repackage him as a person with logic.
I believe all is not lost.
Well, you know why? Let me tell you something.
Depending on the circumstances.
Let me tell you something. With Rigathi or not, people will say they are cabbages. People will go to work, and people will work in this country. We move because we are resilient as Kenyans, not because Rigathi exists. No, not because the deputy president is or is not. No, even if there's no deputy president for the next 2 years, we will still move on as Kenyans. You'll come to work, I'll go to work, the matatu driver will drive his car. So what is it that he influences on us? What is it that we're debating about him? What is it? Suffice it to say, therefore, he is important when he is important to us. Otherwise, if he's not important and politics in the manner he is not important. Tell me his importance to you. Tell me his importance to any other person. So he become important when then there's something you offer. And let me tell you, the Mount Kenya MPs are not going to him because he offers nothing.
Okay.
First, he doesn't offer money. Number two, because they don't have money right now. But where are the goodies? Where are the goodies with the members of parliament from Mount Kenya? You want a road built, it is national government. You want, because you want to be re-elected. You want a dispensary, you want this. You get it from government. You don't get it from Rigathi. He does not go there to the government. Wait, he doesn't go to government to say, we don't have this road, coffee farmers are suffering, and therefore build this road. He doesn't do that. He politics for himself every day.
3 years is a long time, and you all know this. You have played politics.
So it's 2 years.
I get it.
So it's 1 day. That's why there's a censure motion.
And that is why I'm also trying to imagine what if he repackages himself.
He can't. Let me tell you why he can't. Why you know you don't. You can't be this thief. Then suddenly you want to tell me now I'm not a thief and therefore I repackage myself as a model of a reformist of thieves. No.
Okay.
You've marketed yourself in a certain way. Look,
what do you think?
The constant of the mind is that it is the first in time. So you introduce yourself as this beast, you continue with that narrative in my mind. You know, it is not one mind, it's not two minds. It's called a national psyche. The entire collective thinking of Kenyans about him. Let him start for presidency.
I think I cannot agree more. Suffice to say that he has had his chances. You can say that over the last 2 years, he's not been told that whatever rhetoric is propagating is good for him or the country. I am certain that the office of the deputy president has sufficient advisors, qualified advisors. I know some of them who work there. I know for sure they've tried to tell him as much, but I'm not sure whether he listens, because if he does, then we should have seen him changing. I think time is of the essence, and I don't think he has enough time left. I think time is up for him.
You know, one unfortunate thing is that time is also up for us. I don't know. You've just finished it up.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, this is a conversation I'm so sure we are going to have for the longest time to come, because we also experienced the same in the last regime, and here we are again talking about it. Interesting to be a Kenyan. Thank you so much, Wakili. George Kithi joining us. He's also, but the Wakili means advocate of the High Court. Asante sana. And yes, Paul Mugambi, thank you so much for joining us for the first time.
Asante sana.
A pleasure having you. All right, so let's take a break. And we come back. We are crossing over to Zinga. Rashid Mamkondo will be having that discussion over there. Let's take a break. We'll be right back with more. Stay with us.